Fantastic. And encourage to wait for cars to settle, so there's no noise on the thing, and then you call. Do you introduce yourself first?
Yes, I'm Gordon Castle. I was born and brought up in Alnwick and educated in Alnwick at every non-Catholic school. I was in the RAF for 25 years, then I ran Barter Books for 24 years, and now I'm a county councillor for Alnwick.
Could you tell us what is the Alnwick Fair?
I didn't hear you correctly.
Could you tell us what is the Alnwick Fair? Oh, hang on, pause 1 second. This might help in the air conditioning.
I didn't quite hear your question. The air conditioning
The
doesn't...
questions have got to be nice and loud, yeah? Has that gone off? What is the Alnwick Fair?
Oh, the Alnwick Fair. Right, I've got you now. Oh, what was the Alnwick Fair? The Alnwick Fair was an occasion organised by a group of Alnwick people to actually bring a bit of fun to the town at the start of the summer in order to get people interested in the town and its history and just to help bring it to life a little bit. It was a fun event and it was very popular for many years.
Could you tell us what some of the attractions there were?
Well, the main attraction was that everybody that participated in the event was expected to dress up in medieval uniform, or at least Georgian or possibly even Victorian uniform. They dressed up in period uniforms, or clothing, I should say, men and women and children. And that was taken very seriously by the town, and most people did. And also it was a bit of fun. Some really fun events took place, and there were stalls selling goods, and there were processions through the town, and the whole town was involved.
And what positives did it bring about?
Oh, what it brought to Alnwick was it strengthens what could I describe as a very strong sense of identity that Alnwick has. It's got a great history, as I'm sure you know, and it's been here a long time. And families tend to stay here and don't leave, or if they do leave, they come back, like me. But it was felt that the town was a hidden secret, and that the medieval fair would bring people to Alnwick, because business needs business people to come through the doors and visitors. It's now what you would call a visitor destination. Tourism is a major part of the economy. When the fair started in '69, that wasn't the case. It was a service centre for Northumberland, and there were shops of various kinds, but it was decided that the Alnwick Fair would bring people to Alnwick that hadn't or wouldn't otherwise have come.
So we say that the Alnwick Fair helped out the local area economically?
It certainly did, no question about that. For a start, the organisers were all volunteers. They weren't paid. They were Alnwick people, a group of local guys whom I knew quite well. They were older than me at the time, and but I know them well enough. Ian Robertson, Mr. Penrose. Penrose was the television and radio shop. Robertson, famous Alnwick family. The fountain, Robertson's Pant, from that family. Kenny Kim, who owned a lot of property. These were people who came together and felt that something could be done for the town to help it economically as well as bring it to life.
What was some of your best memories of the Alnwick Fair?
Well, I've got some great memories of the fair. The fun of the thing was undeniable. And there were one or two silly games were introduced. Games that nobody had ever heard of. And one of them I do remember was called Dwyle Flonking. That's got me as well. It was a silly game where you had, it was with mops and water, and it was a bit of a race, and it was so silly that everybody loved it. There was a strongman competition where the strongman had to carry a heavy weight up the hill, along Bondgate Without, all the way up the hill to what was and still is the Tanner's Arms, and that was a tough call. And that was fun. That was hugely well attended. And probably the one that was the most fun and most notorious at the time was the ducking, the ducking of the wenches. And there was a large, very carefully made, big wooden structure with water in it. And there was a structure whereby the guilty girl, as it was, with her consent at the time, I might say, was strapped into this big ducking square, and 3 or 4 guys on the end of a lever ducked her into the water and dropped her in and out again. And of course she would scream as loud as she possibly could, which was part of the fun. And part of the fun was actually chasing the guilty wench around the marketplace. Wench was a name for a girl in those days. It was all fun, I stress that. But it probably would be less acceptable now.
And why is Alnwick Fair no longer a thing?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it ran out of steam. Things do, you know. It was one of those entertainments that needed a group of committed people prepared to put a lot of work and effort in. And some of those people died and moved away, and they weren't replaced by people who had that sense of belonging to the Alnwick Fair. And it ran for a long time. And if you ask me when it finished, I actually can't remember. It started in '69 and went on for decades. It was very popular. And I think also, why did it stop? I think the wench ducking became a bit too notorious. Can I put it that way? I do remember in the early stages, I'll carefully phrase this, the girls who were dipped into the water had to be advised to wear a bit more of their underclothing, because once they got soaked and lifted out of the water, it was all a bit too revealing, do you understand? So that had to be changed a little bit. And of course it was one of those things that the modern world would find slightly degrading, I think, and I don't see it coming back. There was also a fair queen, and there were processions, which I remember being part of.
I think it was 2007 that stopped.
Did it stop? Actually, more recently than I had expected.
Yeah.
Decades it went on then. Yeah, nearly 30 years.
Do you miss the Alnwick Fair?
Oh yes, bear in mind I was away in the Air Force for 25 years in the middle of it, but when I came back, I always came back to Alnwick, always intended to live here permanently, and I always made sure if I possibly could, I would come back on Fair Week because it was fun. And the pubs, you know, had a good time of it, as you'd expect, because people went to the various events at all the different pubs. And it was fun, and I don't remember any real trouble. And one of the publicans, Winston Hardesty, he owned and ran the Tanner's Inn, and he was a major force in this. And he was a funny man, but he was, you know, also quite a good organizer, and he made sure things worked. But eventually it ran out of steam, and we're all very sorry about it.
What was your favourite memory of the fair?
I think I used to find the strongman competition was really fun. And I once had to dress up. We had a procession where we had characters from The Wizard of Oz. And I remember making my own covered armour for myself and walking in the procession around the town. I felt horribly conspicuous, so I made sure I had a good mask on and nobody knew who I was. And, but it was a fun day, and of course it always ended up in the pub. But, you know, there was not too much excessive behaviour. It was good fun, a lot of alcohol fueled in some cases, but the whole day involved the whole population, and at all levels of the town, you know, and at all age groups as well. Older people, they were part of it, and so were youngsters. That was part of its great attraction.
What was your earliest memory?
Oh, the first one, 1969. I heard about it, I thought, I worked in Preston at the time, and I came back, and I saw the last part of it, and I could see that it was going down quite well. It was obviously early days, and I'm trying to find, I've got the program somewhere, the first program, it's sitting around somewhere. Yeah, I struggled to find it this morning, but I will. And what was different was the involvement of people. It was fun, and nothing went to plan, and that was part of the attraction. Nothing ever quite ever goes to plan, but when it doesn't in a fun occasion, it's even funnier. So it was just a sense of the town really letting its hair down for a few days.
Would you like to see it rehearsed?
Oh, I would. And I actually was chairman of the Alnwick International Music Festival for a while, which wasn't an alternative, but it was a different kind, but similar kind of event, where we had musical groups from all over the world, and I mean all over the world, used to come to Alnwick and perform, and that was fun because it brought people into the town, and we had the stage in the marketplace and lots of events, and that's come to an end as well, unfortunately, because it requires a group of people committed to it. So for the fair to return, and it could, it requires people who are prepared to give up their own time without pay and get it going again and keep it going again. Yes, it could, and I hope it does.
Since COVID and everyone not being allowed to get together, why are festivals and fairs like this so important?
Oh, I think to restore that sense of community that there always has been in Alnwick. I've lived around the world, and frankly, I could have lived where I liked, but there was never even crossed my mind not to come here. You're young people, you might well leave the town and be educated elsewhere and work elsewhere. I think in your mind you'll find out that civilization doesn't get a lot better than here. And it's a great place to live, just the right size, magnificent countryside, and its economy is not too bad. So I hope that we do get something like this restored. Post-COVID, it was a really difficult time, wasn't it? We all remember that, a tough one. It wasn't just adults that suffered. Children did, education did. It was terribly disruptive. Hopefully we're going to get back to normal. The cost of living crisis might affect everybody. That doesn't say we can't have fun.
What other community gatherings have there been or are there still going on in Alnwick?
Have there been? Well, for example, something I organised during COVID, I just got away with it somehow, was a motorbike meeting in the marketplace. So we had a vintage motorbike festival. And we opened up the marketplace one Sunday, and goodness, it was a great success. We were lucky with the weather. That's the one problem Alnwick has. It's not guaranteed to be rain-free, but we were lucky, and it was really well attended. I would personally like to see, and I've got a lot of support for this, and that's not just because I ride motorbikes, motorbikes only on Sundays. A bit like Rothbury has full of motorbikes on a Sunday if you ever go up there. Alnwick Marketplace, the perfect place. I'd like to see that, a regular event. The music festival could return, but getting international visas was the real problem. And accommodating overseas groups was easier. Then we put them in school halls. We wouldn't get away with that now. You know, things are a bit tighter and visas harder to get. The food festival. We've just had a food festival. Could have been better advertised, and it wasn't quite what I expected. But, you know, the food festival is a good reason to come to Alnwick. And I think that could be resurrected.